Hello everyone, welcome to the Talking Newspaper for Friday 5th of May. I'm Howard.
And I'm Imelda.
Let's deal as usual with the society news. On Tuesday, the strollers will be meeting. That's Tuesday 9th of May. The stroll will be going to Wroxall Down with lunch afterwards at the Star Inn. The group will meet for coffee at Knighton Post Office at 10:45am. The next session of Introducing Millbrook House will take place on Tuesday 9th of May. This is a chance for anybody to come along and discover what's available in terms of equipment or services to visually impaired people. Introducing Millbrook House is open to everyone who would like to find out more about what's on offer. The session runs from 10:30am till 12pm. The Dolphins group will be meeting to swim on Tuesday 9th of May at the Waterside Pool in Ryde. The pool is closed to the public during the session. If you'd like to go swimming, please call the Society first to advise us of your level of swimming ability. Please note lifeguards are in attendance during the session. On Wednesday, the weekly coffee morning will be held as usual to support the Society. That's the 10th of May. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea as well as a piece of cake. The Owls will be meeting on Wednesday, 10th of May at 2pm in Millbrook House. The speaker for this week's meeting is Paul Ferguson, and he will be talking about rock and roll and aeroplanes. The group lasts approximately 45 minutes, which is then followed by tea or coffee and cake. Thursday, the Knitters and Natterers are meeting at Millbrook House. The group starts at 10:30 until 2pm. You can knit or just natter, then later in the afternoon, volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics. Please note transport may be available to some of the groups, but please call the Society first on 522205.
And now it's time for the scaffolding news. Please find below a list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding or hoarding. We are unable to include end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also included are tables and chair permits that have been issued in the past week. In the Bay Area, Lloyd's Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin, 24 High Street, Sandown, Fat Harry's Chip Shop, 53 High Street, Sandown, due up on the 15th of May. New Street furniture permits have been given to Shoe Zone, 10 to 12 Regent Street, Shanklin, display bank baskets. And in the Cowes area, development site, Castle Street East Cowes, 2 Sunny Hill Cowes, the Aspect High Street Cowes, 43 High Street Cowes, 30 Beckford Road Cowes, scaffold on Consort Road, and the current hoardings are 272 to 283 Arctic Road Cowes, 93 High Street Cowes, July Cottage Bars Hill Cowes, due up on the 15th of May, 44 High Street Cowes, due up on the 15th of May, Jersey Cottage, Market Hill, Sunhill Cowes, due up on the 25th of May. In the Newport area, we have Nippert Court, West Street, Newport, Newport Minster in St Thomas's Square, Island Optical, 1 High Street, the Guildhall, High Street, TSB Bank, 119 High Street, Animal, 34 High Street. In the Ryde area, we have Spence Willard Estate Agent, Grove House, Sherborne Street, Bembridge, Abry, Madeira Road, Seaview, Michelangelo's, 30 St Thomas Street, Ryde, Solent Court, Castle Street, Ryde, Lloyd's Bank, High Street, Bembridge, 25 George Street, Ryde, French Franks, James House, St Thomas Square, Ryde, 25 George Street, Ryde, French Franks, James House, St Thomas Square, Ryde, they've said that twice, rear of Ivy Hall, Sloop Lane, Wooden, West Wight area, Cornerways, the Broadway, Totland, South Wight area, 2 Trinity Road, Ventnor, former Mill Bay Hotel, Esplanade, Ventnor, Met Bar, Esplanade Road, Ventnor, 29 Spring Hill, Ventnor, 4 Market Square, Ventnor, 99 High Street, Ventnor. And this week's In Touch. In Touch this week's episode, Professor Anthony King, a trustee of the International Glaucoma Association, explains the implication of a new test for glaucoma. He said that the test needs further research and that it will not be available on the National Health. He advises people get tested at their optician in the usual way if they suspect or fear they may be at risk of acquiring glaucoma. Peter Wight goes to Manchester to meet social media celebrity Annie Giles Quinn. Annie talks to Peter about her blindness and how she deals with it. She demonstrates to Peter how she uses the live mode on Facebook to help keep herself safe while out walking her dog.
Now the county press for May the 5th. There are two main headlines today. One is to do with the shock death of a beautiful child, and the other is inevitably the news about Andrew Turner quitting but standing by his views. The family of a 6-year-old girl who collapsed and died on her way to school have paid tribute to their beautiful and caring girl. Kyla Blake only took 20 steps from her home in Woodbine Close, Newport, on Wednesday, April 26th, before she collapsed. Paramedics fought to save the 9 Acres primary school pupil, but she was pronounced dead around an hour later. Her heartbroken mother, Vicky Pittman, said Kyla was a beautiful soul who made her and her father, Justin Blake, proud every day. Kyla leaves behind her 2 sisters, Eleanor Blake 7 and Soraya Blake 5, and Vicky often referred to them as the 3 Musketeers. I never dreamt I wouldn't be picking her up that day. She just looked so perfect, said Vicky. We had a beautiful morning of cuddles on the sofa. I gave her a bath, we had lots of giggles, and she had breakfast. It was just a usual Wednesday morning before school. She helped me pack the lunch boxes and told me off for not taking the stalk off her grapes, and she also started telling me off for not putting her banana in there. Then we left the house. She just collapsed, and that was it. She really was an amazing little girl. She touched so many lives, and it makes us so proud of her. The family are waiting to find out the cause of Kyla's death. Beth Dyer, 9 Acres head teacher, said, "It's with great sadness for everyone connected with 9 Acres Primary School that we have learned of the death of Kyla. She was a lovely and unique pupil, and she'll be dearly missed by all her schoolmates and the staff. We were blessed to have Kyla at 9 Acres Primary."
Turner quits, but stands by his views. A week on from the scandal that prompted his downfall as Island MP, Andrew Turner remains unapologetic for comments about homosexuality made to young politics students. Mr. Turner's 16-year-old career as MP came crashing to an end within hours of a storm prompted by a Facebook post by 16-year-old Christ the King college student Esther Poucher. She condemned Mr. Turner's response after he was asked by students if he supported the Pride movement on the Isle of Wight, which is behind events this year to promote LGBTQ+ rights. Esther wrote, "I asked him if he'd had any involvement in the event, and his answer has truly shocked me to the point of outrage. He told us he'd been invited, but wasn't intending to go. This is because, and this is a direct quote, he thinks homosexuality is wrong and dangerous to society." The county press spoke to several students who were present, all of whom gave similar accounts of what was said. In a message to parents due to be sent out today, Friday, Christ the King College principal Pat Goodhead said, Mr. Turner was asked if he had any involvement in the Gay Pride rally, which was held for the first time on the island. Andrew Turner gave an honest personal response, in which he said he would not be involved and shared his reasons. Later on in the session, when another student returned to this issue to seek clarification, Mr. Turner confirmed his views were based on his own personal religious beliefs. Yesterday, Thursday, Mr. Turner sought to clarify his remarks. He said, "Answering a question about the planned Gay Pride event on the island, I expressed my view it was dangerous and wrong. In response to a later question, I clarified my concerns about homosexuality, and these are based on personal religious views. I respect others have different perspectives, but I have a right to my own views, and I do not regret being honest about them, which I have always tried to be. I have no further comment on this matter. He thanked his staff and those whom he had said had contacted him in support of his right to express his view. In a statement issued by Conservative Party HQ in the hours after the incident, Mr Turner announced he was quitting as Island MP. It has been my privilege to serve the people of the Isle of Wight as their Member of Parliament. I have been incredibly fortunate to represent such a beautiful constituency. It's time for a new generation to take up the mantle of representing my fantastic constituents, he said. His failure to apologise or even refer to the marks branded abhorrent by members of his own party and fiercely condemned by opponents prompted fresh criticism from across the political spectrum, the public and LGBTQ+ campaigners. Isle of Wight Council Conservative candidate Ewan Smith-Wainwright said, "I would like to say, as a young gay man, I faced a lot of homophobia and discrimination growing up, and it is deeply concerning that views like this are still being expressed in 2017, when I thought the world had moved on." Conservative group leader Dave Stewart said, "Island Conservatives are fielding several candidates in the council election who are gay, and this is most certainly not an opinion that either myself or anyone else in the team of Conservative council candidates would ever support. It's very disappointing to hear such comments from someone I know, and it's a shame for him to end his career in this way. But what he said was unacceptable." Following the announcement of Mr Turner's resignation, Esther Poucher said, "We defeated hate today, and I'm so grateful to anyone who shared, liked and spoke out for what is right."
Now on to other articles. The substandard care provided by a cosmetic dentist has been described as deplorable by regulators. Jacques Gautier has been barred from practising for 12 months by the General Dental Council after a fitness to practice panel upheld dozens of allegations and found him guilty of misconduct. The panel found he gave patients dental implants without adequately assessing them, obtaining consent or discussing alternative treatment options, neglected to carry out examinations or at least record that they had taken place, and failed to treat pain and gum disease. He failed to take x-rays in some cases and carried out unnecessary x-rays in others, and his record keeping was inadequate. Some treatment was carried out without clinical justification, and one patient subjected to substandard treatment was left with a swollen palate and an implant placed in a socket that had not healed. According to the panel's findings, the facts relate to serious and sustained failings in fundamental aspects of dentistry over a period of several years and across a number of individual patient cases. Mr Gautier's actions placed 9 patients at risk of harm and in one case caused actual harm. His conduct would in many circumstances be considered deplorable by his fellow practitioners. The charges relate to the treatment of 10 patients at the St James's Clinic Newport, which he owned, between September 2006 and May 2015. He no longer works at the practice, which is now under new management.
Labour Party picks its man. A father of 3 who lives in Ryde has been selected as the Isle of Wight Labour candidate. Julian Critchley, a former teacher, will be the parliamentary candidate for the June 8th general election. In an email to the local membership, Mr Critchley, 47, said, "To be selected as a parliamentary candidate is an incredible honour and not one I take lightly. Following in the footsteps of such excellent Labour candidates as Deb Gardner, Mark Chiverton and Stuart Blackmore is a daunting task, and one I hope I will be able to do justice to." Mr Critchley has previously worked for the Department for Education and is a former teacher at a London comprehensive school, having also worked for a short time in the Cabinet Office. Originally from St Helens, Lancashire, he was a founder member of the South London Amateur Rugby League Club and has also refereed for 15 years in South East Rugby League.
Island organisations met to discuss the impact of potential cuts to the NHS and what it would mean for the Isle of Wight. Representatives from the Isle of Wight Labour Party, Unite the Isle of Wight and trade councils joined groups from across Hampshire to talk about the sustainability and transformation plan, which will see changes to healthcare across the country. Details of the island's plan are still being finalised. A Facebook book called IOW Save Our NHS has now been set up. Anyone wishing to get involved can email ioysaveournhs@gmail.com.
Now a little bit more. The student who ousted an MP but can't vote at the election. Hours after visiting an A-level politics class at Christ the King College, Island MP Andrew Turner has resigned. A single Facebook post from Esther Poucher unseated the island's second longest serving MP, a feat his political opponents could only dream of. Esther, 16, of Cowes, spoke to the county press about the controversy, what it was like to be in the centre of a medium storm, and the travesty of being unable to vote in June elections. It's completely insane, she said. It looked for a while as if the Facebook post wasn't going to achieve anything, that it was just going to be a comment he made that people didn't like. Then, when it started to have a proper influence, I was shocked we'd managed to achieve this change and that we'd all stood up and said, this is not what we want.
A further article about that, Isle of Wight Pride, the organisation behind this summer's inaugural Island Pride March, said it had been deeply shocked and saddened by the episode. Any person who makes such a statement in a public forum, as our MP did, is dangerous. Suicide rates among LGBT young people are still disproportionately high. Mr. Turner didn't know if anyone in the room was struggling with their sexuality or gender identity, and he doesn't know how his comments may have impacted on those present. There are lots of organisations available to provide support and guidance to LGBT young people, including Stonewall and also our own Breakout Youth Service. Nobody should be told they're a danger to society based on who they love or on their gender identity. Isle of Wight Pride has not specifically invited any individuals, as we want to be as inclusive as possible and want all to feel welcome. We openly welcome Mr. Turner to attend Pride, meet some of his own constituents he's supposed to fully represent, and find out for himself we are not a dangerous group of human beings and that love wins.
And who will be the Tory candidate? After a turbulent week for the island's Conservative Party, just 2 candidates will fight to replace Andrew Turner as next month's general election candidate. A shortlist of 3 people was revealed on Tuesday, with Islanders Bob Seeley and Mark Fox, plus former David Cameron speechwriter Claire Foge, named. But within 24 hours, Mr. Fox had withdrawn, saying he had been shortlisted prematurely. Less than a day later, Miss Foge too dropped out, citing a family move to the West Country, according to the Conservative Association. With just Bob Seeley left on the list, the Island Conservative Association asked for fellow Islander Joe Robertson to be put forward as a possible candidate, a move that was approved by the National Party. Members will decide who will be the candidate at a meeting held at Newport Minster this evening, Friday. And Bob Seeley, a little bit about him. Mr. Seeley was elected as the Central Wight Isle of Wight councillor in 2013. He's a former soldier, decorated during his service in Iraq in 2009, and has worked as an advisor at Conservative Central Office. Mr. Seeley, who lives in Chillerton, was awarded the military MBE in 2016. During his time on the Isle of Wight Council, his work has included campaigning for further public consultation on devolution plans and against overdevelopment in his ward. And Joe Robertson, Mr. Robertson of St Helens, works as a solicitor with mainland firm Jasper Vincent. He's head of the Dispute Resolution and Litigation Team, which has been involved in cases such as the News of the World phone hacking scandal. On the island, he is the chair of St Helens Parish Council and a governor of the Federation of Arraton, St George's and Oakfield Primary School, and on the board of trustees of Isle of Wight Citizens Advice.
Labour won't stand aside to allow the Green Party a better shot at winning the island seat in the general election. Julian Critchley, Isle of Wight Labour's parliamentary candidate, said the idea wasn't going to happen and should be put to bed. High-profile Labour members wrote to the Island Party asking them not to put up a candidate for June, giving Green candidate Vix Lowthian a greater chance of taking the seat. The letter was signed by MPs John Cruddas and Clive Lewis, plus Baroness Helena Kennedy, the musician Billy Bragg, and journalist Paul Mason, Owen Jones, and Polly Toynbee, who was born on the island. According to the letter published on Sunday, Labour, which on the Isle of Wight finished fourth behind the Conservatives, UKIP and Greens in 2015, had no realistic hope of winning on the island or in Brighton Pavilion, where they also called for the Labour to withdraw its candidate. The authors claim a split in the progressive vote could mean a Tory landslide, and they praised the Green Party's decision to stand aside in Ealing Central and Brighton Kemp Town. But Mr Critchley said there was a danger this sort of political manoeuvring would backfire. The people who voted for Labour in 2015 are not sheep to be directed into particular voting sheds. Some people seem to have the wrong idea about how elections work. We serve our voters, they don't serve us. We're proud of our policies and proud of our principles. We believe that what we're offering can appeal to people from across the political spectrum, whether through the pledge to take railways and schools back into public ownership or the commitment to build 1 million homes over the next 5 years. Miss Lowthian said, "It's wonderful to have the support from such a strong list of signatories. It's obviously a decision for the local and National Labour Party to make, but it won't affect the Green campaign on the island."
19 leave jobs after abuse allegations. In just 1 year, 9 people who worked with children were sacked and 10 resigned after abuse allegations were made against them. According to figures released by the Isle of Wight Council, 201 safeguarding referrals were made during the last financial year to the Local Authority Designated Officer, LADO, the staff member responsible for handling allegations of abuse or neglect. Referrals are made when anyone who works with children, including teachers, social workers, health professionals and volunteers, is alleged to have behaved in a way that may have harmed a child or possibly committed a criminal offence involving a child. Behaviours suggesting someone may pose a risk to children, such as posting inappropriate material online, can also be referred to the LADO. During the 2015-16 financial year, the latest available data, 63 of the 201 allegations were substantiated. As a result, 9 staff members across the children's workforce were dismissed and 10 resigned when the allegations were put to them. The referrals were passed to the island's multi-agency safeguarding hub, which includes social workers and police officers, to determine the appropriate level of response, from disciplinary action, such as a verbal or written warning, to criminal prosecution. At the time of going to press, the Council were unable to confirm if any of the 63 cases had resulted in a prosecution. Children's Service Area Director Kathy Marriott said the number of LADO referrals had increased by 30% in the previous year, partly as a result of training carried out at schools and youth groups, and partly due to greater awareness around child abuse. It's not just about sexual abuse, she said. Increasingly, we are seeing adults who hold a position of trust putting things on social media, such as confidential information about a child or material that's inappropriately provocative or insensitive, which can be viewed by the public. Referrals could relate to an adult making contact with a child online. It could be a teacher has broken up a fight and an observer feels that they went too far or has used inappropriate language towards a child. The increased number of referrals shows that there is a greater awareness of the LADO role, and the number of dismissals and resignations shows how response has been robust. More than 5,000 people work with children on the island or volunteer with youth or church groups, so I think the figures are proportionate.
A look back now at some of the incidents that have occurred in the 16 years Andrew Turner has been MP. Elections. After standing unsuccessfully in Hackney South and Shoreditch in the 1992 general election and in Birmingham in the 1994 European parliamentary election, Mr Turner was elected as the island's MP in 2001, 2005, 2010 and 2015, which was his largest majority. He was narrowly reselected as the 2015 candidate after opponents claimed questions about his expenses and his personal life. Parliamentary highlights. Mr Turner was selected to serve on the executive of the 1922 Committee of the Conservative Party and as a member of the Education and Skills Select Committee. He acted as Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party from 2003 to 2005, and in 2013 he was named Parliamentarian of the Year by The Spectator magazine, together with other MPs who voted no on enforced press regulation. The expenses scandal. Allegations he wrongly claimed £103,000 to refurbish his 5-bedroom Georgian house Newport by designating it his second home were denied by Mr Turner. He defended the designation, which enabled him to claim taxpayers' cash between 2004 and 2010 for mortgage payments, council tax and home improvements, as he said he spent more time in London. Following the leg audit in the wake of the expenses scandal, the only sum Mr Turner repaid was £681.60 for mortgage insurance wrongly claimed on his behalf while he was ill. All other expenses were deemed allowable. The stroke. Mr Turner suffered a serious stroke in 2006 and showed enormous determination to recuperate. Following rehabilitation, he continued to suffer from aphasia, a speech and language disability, which Mr Turner said made it difficult to find the right words. He maintained the condition did not prevent him from doing his job after opponents questioned his fitness to be an MP. The Employment Tribunal. Claims of bullying in Mr Turner's office, allegedly dominated by Miss Dennett, who was described as fiery when cross or after a liquid lunch, were heard at a 2004 Employment Tribunal. It found former office manager Colin Hedgley had been unfairly dismissed and awarded him £10,250. The polecat savaging. Mr Turner apologised to Isle of Wight Ferret Club member Patricia Price after his Jack Russell Terrier Bert savaged her polecat at the 2061 Isle of Wight show. The polecat, Socks, did not survive the mauling. The campaigns. Mr Turner supported the One Wight campaign to ensure the island didn't share an MP with Hampshire and fight for the Wight. The government subsequently agreed the island should be protected and decided it will have 2 MPs in the future. And lastly, the Tiger. During one of the most watched PMQs in recent times, when New Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn clashed with PM David Cameron for the first time, Mr Turner found himself at the centre of a media circus after asking a question about a tiger. He may have been lambasted, but his intervention enabled Simi to be brought from Belgium to the Isle of Wight Zoo.
Academy set to merge with Ride. Sandown Bay Academy is set to be merged with Ride Academy. It was announced yesterday, Thursday. Ride Academy Joy Ballard will oversee the transition, which will take effect from September 2018. Since her appointment, Mrs. Ballard has dramatically improved Ride Academy, which has the same sponsor, the Academics Enterprise Trust, AET. Already many Sandown sixth formers study at Ride. The new arrangement will mean one governing body and one pool finance and administration. There will be a single head too. AET said its plans would be subject to a full consultation among stakeholders, including staff and families of students at both schools. It will be launched later this month. The final decision will then rest with the government. AET said its plan to merge the schools was caused by the falling numbers of students, which forms part of a pattern of overcapacity in school provision across the island. An AET spokesman said, "This fall in enrolment has a direct impact on schools' finances when they are already struggling in a difficult funding climate nationally. It is further exacerbated in the case of Sandown Bay, which has been running a significant deficit. In this situation, it has been becoming increasingly difficult for the school to fund the teachers and the educational resources needed in order to provide the education we would all want for the students. We believe merger offers the best option all around, and that out of these two schools we can create one really great one, an academy that is recognised as the best educational provision on the island." AET said further details of the planned merger would be provided when the formal consultation was launched. Ryde Academy has been celebrating significant improvement under the leadership of Mrs. Ballard, having been rated good by Ofsted in 2016. In a report which found pupil attainment was rapidly rising, it praised the inspiration leadership at the school.
At the same time, pressure this week mounted on the Academy's Enterprise Trust, that's the AET, to walk away from the troubled Sandown Bay Academy. The Chairman of Governors organised a protest meeting at the school without telling AET and then resigned his position 2 days later. Nearly 100 parents attended Tuesday's meeting to hear Chris Quirke's wide-ranging allegations of AET mismanagement and to express their concerns at the way the school is being run. Mr. Quirke had been kept on by AET to serve as the sole local representative on a new school management board it established after disbanding the Board of Governors. Mr. Quirke then resigned yesterday, that's Thursday, saying he jumped before he was pushed. After the meeting, AET strongly refuted the mismanagement and financial allegations and said it was doing all it could to support Sandown in the wake of the resignation of its head teacher, Claire Charlemagne. At the meeting, Mr. Quirke accused AET of skimming off £2 million from Sandown since it took over in 2011, as well as insisting on budget cuts of £850,000. But, he said, despite initial fears about enforced job losses, probably no teaching staff would face compulsory redundancy and only a handful of other staff would lose their jobs without agreement. The way governors have been treated by AET is appalling. I believe AET is toxic, he said. Hundreds of people have signed a petition calling for the removal of AET as Sandown Bay Academy sponsor. The petition, started this week by Anthony Freelove, accuses AET of presiding over an almost 6-year period of decline in both stability and pupil attainment. By Thursday, that's yesterday, more than 600 people had signed the petition.
Church bell tolls for war heroes. The tenor bell at St George's Church, Arreton, was tolled 100 times in remembrance of 2 men from the parish who lost their lives in the First World War. Wednesday, April the 19th, marked the 100th anniversary of the deaths of Captain Charles Seymour Pittis, 21, and Rifleman 330708 William James Hookey, 39. Captain Pittis of the Isle of Wight Rifles was killed in active service in Palestine during the Second Battle of Gaza and was buried with full military honours in the Gaza War Cemetery. Father of 4, Rifleman Hookey was also part of the Isle of Wight Rifles and died in the same battle but has no known grave. Both of their names were recorded on the parish war memorial at St George's Church.
A rare ingot made from part of the most valuable gold Roman coin ever minted was declared treasure by the island coroner. It was found by metal detectorist Peter Peach in a Shalfleet field in July last year, an inquest was told last Thursday. Archaeologist Frank Basford said the early gold dated from between AD 439 to 470 and was probably not of official Roman issue, but from the Visigoths, who invaded parts of Europe, including Rome, Spain and France. Island coroner Caroline Sumere praised the finder in coming forward. Not everyone who finds treasure reports it, and that's a loss to the nation, she said. After the inquest, Mr. Peach of Cranley Gardens at Cowes said, "I try to get out every day with my metal detector and have previously found mostly Anglo-Saxon items. The inquest was declared treasure, meaning it can be bought by a museum or an individual, and the sale price split between finder and landowner."
2 jailed for attack at Colwell Common. 2 men were jailed for grievous bodily harm after an attack at Colwell Common last July. Taliesin Whiteside, 20, of Avenue Road, Freshwater, and Marcus Knight, 20, of Trafalgar's Road, Newport, were both given 15-month sentences by Deputy Circuit Judge John Price. A third man, Carlo Dent, 43, of Dalt Square, Freshwater, was given a 50-month sentence, suspended for 2 years, and ordered to carry out 100 hours unpaid work and pay £500 compensation. The trio admitted inflicting grievous bodily harm on Nathaniel Green after an argument between Mr. Green and Whiteside. Mr. Green received a text message from Whiteside accusing him of bullying Whiteside's sister, and the pair agreed to meet Simon Foster, prosecuting, told the Isle of Wight court. An altercation was envisaged by both, Mr. Foster said. Whiteside did not come along, having enlisted the help of Knight. At first, Whiteside and Mr. Green fought one-on-one, but Knight joined in, hitting Mr. Green on the back of the head with a bat. Mr. Green was pushed to the ground, and Dent, who had been passing by and knew the men, joined in. All 3 continued the attack on Mr. Green as he lay on the ground. Mr. Green suffered a broken rib, a collapsed lung, and a severe gash to the head. Defending Whiteside, Barry McEldew said the offence was out of character for his client, who had no previous convictions. Defending Dent, Mr. McEldew said, although Dent had spent time in prison, he only played a small role in this offence. Chris Stopper for Knight said his young client had had a difficult childhood and his involvement was misguided.
A man sustained head and facial injuries following an alleged assault in Newport last Friday. One witness told the county press he saw 2 men arguing near St James's Square when one head-butted the other before striking him with a crash helmet. The 17-year-old victim was left bleeding from his injuries. The witness, who asked not to be named, said he'd started to walk away, then he turned and swung the crash helmet and hit him in the face. There was an almighty crack. It was pretty nasty. They both looked quite young, maybe in their late teens. A police spokesman said, "We were called at 2:20 p.m. by ambulance service reporting an assault in St James's Square in Newport. The injured person was taken to St Mary's Hospital. Inquiries are ongoing and no arrests have been made."
Talk on a More Humane World. A talk about peace and working towards a more humane world will be held next week. A proposal for peace, hosted by Robert Harrop, takes place at the Island Innovation Sixth Form campus on Monday. It starts at 6:15 and will be followed by a question and answer session. It's a free event and people can register their intention to attend, and there is an email address which is quite complex.
It may be considered a hobby of rich landowners, but the Isle of Wight Hunt is so short of money it's asked for donations. The Hunt, which has around £11,000 in the bank, has appealed for contributions towards its £40,000 to £50,000 annual running costs. In a letter to supporters, Chairman Todd Carder said the problems had arisen because the Ashy Scurry, one of the organisation's biggest fundraisers, didn't take place last year due to bad weather, and spectator numbers had dropped this year as a result. The financial position of the Hunt is dire, and in order to remedy this we need everyone who cares passionately about the foxhounds to help, he said. The board is determined to run as many fundraisers as possible and would welcome fresh ideas. In the short term, we'd welcome any financial support you feel able to give. Expenses include up to £500 a month for food for the 64 hounds at Gatcombe, the cost of caring for the horses, and the huntsman's wages. Halverston farmer Mr. Carter said it was a misconception hunt supporters, which number more than 100, were rich. A lot of people who go out hunting have ordinary jobs. It's not the preserve of the wealthy anymore, he said. Anyone who enjoys the countryside is welcome. When asked why people should donate to the hunt rather than to charity, he said, "I agree it's hard to say it's a worthy cause, but it's a traditional thing that's gone on for centuries. There'd be a lot of sad people if that were to end. We're covering our expenses at the moment, but there's always the possibility it might fold if people don't want to support it."
Shanklin shuttle bus during Victoria Road resurfacing. Island Roads and Southern Vectis are providing a free shuttle bus for local residents during the rebuilding and resurfacing of Victoria Road, Shanklin. The bus will run at regular intervals in the morning and early afternoon, Monday to Saturday, between the Sanford Garage Stop and Shanklin Co-op, throughout the improvement scheme which began on Tuesday. Island Roads has agreed to provide the bus, as the extent of the work required over 17 days and nights to improve Victoria Avenue makes it necessary to close the road around the clock. The bus's eastern-bound route will be Sanford Shanklin Road, Victoria Avenue, Chatsworth Avenue, Orchard Road, Batts Road, Sibden Road, First Hill Road, Hatherton Road, Brook Road, Langard Road Co-op. The westbound route will be Langard Road Co-op, High Street, Grange Road, Panona Road, West Hill Road, Victoria Avenue, Shanklin Road and Sanford. The first service leaves Shanklin Co-op at 9:15 a.m. and is half-hourly until 1:15 p.m. The first service from Sanford will be at 10 a.m. and will run half-hourly until 1:30 p.m. Users may request the shuttle bus to stop along the route, and the driver will stop as long as it's safe to do so.
6 people were taken to hospital after 2 cars collided on Carisbrook Road on Tuesday. 3 fire engines, 3 ambulances and multiple police units were called to the crash at about 4:20 p.m. A man and woman in their 60s had to be cut free from their car by firefighters. A woman in her 40s and 3 children in the other car were also taken to St Mary's. Carisbrook Road between the Wellington Road roundabout and the Cedar Hill roundabout was blocked during rush hour, causing traffic problems. An Isle of Wight ambulance spokeswoman said it wasn't thought any of the injuries were life-threatening.
And a rare Isle of Wight album may very well be worth £3,300. A landfill site somewhere on the island could contain a treasure trove of 50 LPs worth at least £150,000. Cowes musician Mike Jolliffe, 68, revealed the vinyl albums were thrown away by his mum and dad years before they became collected classics worth around £3,300 apiece. In the early 70s, the Jolliffe brothers, Mike and Steve, were synonymous with the island's creative music scene. Now, 46 years after it was first recorded, their folk band Shide and Acorn's one and only album, Under the Tree, has been named the 7th most sought-after vinyl record in the Daily Mirror survey of rare pressings. The survey puts the single of the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen at number 1 in rare records. It was released in 1977 and is now worth around £8,600. The island band was originally called Faux Hammer and recorded Under the Tree at Solent Records after changing their name to Shide and Acorn. Privately pressed copies of the album were released to friends. Just 99 copies of the album were made, and collectors have been known to fork out as much as £3,300 for a copy. The album is still available on CD and features songs such as Eleanor's Song and Girl of the Cosmos. The vocals of Joy Perkis, now Steve's wife, feature on the album. According to the county press this week, Mike, who still plays in an island band called the Accelerators, revealed only around 30 of the original vinyl pressings were likely to still be around. He said, "My mum and dad dumped about 50 of them."
That concludes the first part of today's broadcast, so it's goodbye, best wishes from Howard.
And goodbye and best wishes from Imelda.
Hello, this is continuing the county press for the 5th of May. My name is Alison.
And I'm Stephen.
Letters today. Our academy is not so miserable. A letter from Isaac Lethbridge on behalf of Sandown Bay Academy's School Council. We at the School Council of the so-called Academy of Misery were both confused and upset over how the county press reported on Sandown Bay's Academy's current state. We feel not only does it over-dramatise the situation, but it also doesn't correctly show what Sandown Bay is or represents. Firstly, in the report, not once did it have the opinion or views of any student, and, even worse, if it only ever mentioned the students at our school in a negative light. We feel that by doing this, the county press is painting all students at Sandown in the same way, out of control and violent. The report fails to mention all of the successes of students and instead treats them as assets or simply the problem. At any school, the students are number one priority. Sandown is no different. Secondly, the county press blows out of all proportion the opinions of one unnamed member of staff who stated, "The school was not safe," and "classroom violence was commonplace," both of which are simply not true. There are many members of staff who are happy to work with and educate the students here at Sandown. Finally, throughout the report, there was no sign of hope or positivity for Sandown Bay. We feel that this shows the school in a negative light and even makes newcomers nervous about joining. We do not want to send out these false negative feelings about Sandown because that simply isn't our school. Sandown Bay is no different to any other school. There will be bullying and poor behaviour at every school, just as there is hope and outstanding students at every school. We on the School Council wish to deal with and help those who need it and show our amazing achievements to newcomers and parents. Reporting on only the negative of our school isn't right, as we take pride in being pupils of Sandown Bay Academy. We are not just an academy of misery. There's an editor's footnote. I thank Isaac for his superbly written defence of his school. The county press has no wish to run down Sandown or any other school. We constantly report on the success of all Isle of Wight schools, and last Thursday night I was proud to be on a judging panel that chose Sandown Bay and Ryde Academies as the two schools to represent the island in this year's Young Enterprise Area competition. Sandown's sixth form team were a credit to the school. However, when teachers come to us painting a picture of an unhappy school from their perspective, the head teacher announces her departure and the governors are effectively sacked. We have a duty to report this, and hopefully in the long term things will get better. Of course, we verified the information we were given regarding staff morale, etc., and our sources were backed up.
Now we have a letter from Sam Turner of Sandown, headlined "Christianity Discarded." So, Andrew Turner MP has been forced to resign. But what about reason and debate, and reasoned debate? This has nothing to do with my persuasion either way, or for or against Andrew Turner's remarks. It's just an observation of how intolerant our society is becoming. No one may now have their own view on anything, and this intolerance in recent times is coming right through from school-aged children and into adulthood. Debates and individual views and ideas are fast becoming a no-go area. We British are a throwaway society. If we discard all values, morals, reasoning and debate of our past, then we have nothing to move forward with. We were a Christian country, but what we are becoming with regard reason and debate as the order of the day, or lack of, now appears to be he who shouts loudest and longest wins. Is it right to throw away 1,000 years of our development? Soon, learning of our history will no longer be a requirement in the national curriculum, because our youngsters know it all by 16. So who needs history and the reasoning, debate and experience of their forebears? I question why our youngsters are no longer encouraged to debate, as if someone utters something that is not to their way of thinking, they go AWOL. This is intolerance, and profoundly so, and dangerous to our future. School children are now taught anything goes with regards morals and ethics. Global warming is real, by discussing just the past 100 years and not the millions that really show the true climate picture, etc. I personally found cries from people as young as 16 to 18 years of age quite worrying. I was scared of his, Turner's, remarks. I had to leave the room. I was shocked. 30 or 40 years ago, students of this age group might well have given Mr. Turner a standing ovation. Centuries of the Church of England and Christianity in Britain as we knew it are now being consigned to the gutter. Good or bad as it may have been, but that's where it's going. It appears to me a certain form of fundamentalism is replacing reasoned and informed debate. I would advise we tread that road with great care, as we all have our views and preferences in life. Or is that all coming to an end now, with this new breed of intolerance in our young who, after all, are the future of our country?
No blitz spirit on project, writes D. Burdett from East Cowes. Why do the Isle of Wight Council officers appear to have little regard for the residents of the Cowes and East Cowes area? The floating bridge was taken out of service on January the 2nd. Here we are approaching a major event commemorating the 75th anniversary of the heavy bombing of the town and the protection provided by ORP Bliskovica on May 4th to the 5th, and still no replacement bridge has been installed. The community has been hard at work making preparations to receive the visiting Polish Navy and their ambassador, and provide residents with exhibitions to recount the terrible events that we remind ourselves should never be allowed to happen again. Have the contractors been working as hard on the new slipways for the floating bridge? It would appear not. From observations, we are lucky if we get 40 hours work a week out of the contractors. The excuse of tidal work was short-lived and a long time ago. It looks unlikely the ferry will be installed before the programme of events start on Thursday evening. To aggravate the situation, the last launch will run at 10 p.m, just as the residents are leaving the concerts, so they will be faced with a 10-mile journey home if they live on the other side of the river. A local Isle of Wight councillor has inquired about the situation, but has received no reply. If our elected representatives have difficulty in ensuring residents' needs are taken into account, the future quality of life does not look good. The situation does not only affect local residents, the absence of the floating bridge must be having some impact on Newport traffic.
Now a letter from Lester Williams of Newport, headlined, Will the County Press offer a range of views? For my generation, newspapers and in particular headlines are more influenced in forming opinion than social media. When I go for a coffee at Sainsbury's or Costa in Newport, the only papers available to read are The Sun, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, all papers with a strong Tory bias. With the forthcoming election, surely such establishments should offer their customers a wide range of opinion. I trust the county press will be doing this. And an editor's footnote, Mr. Williams can be assured the county press will remain politically neutral.
I must have missed you, Mr. Packham. Tanya Rebel from Cowes writes, I recently had sight of an election leaflet by Rob Packham, Liberal Democrat candidate. Imagine my surprise when I saw that in there he is apparently interested in the plight of the Frank James Memorial Hospital. In particular, the following sentence, coupled with a picture of Mr. Packham pointing at the hospital, caught my attention. Frank James Hospital has been neglected for far too long, and it is only recently, after I raised this with the town council, work has started on the building, with trees, bushes and green spaces being removed to make way for 17 apartments and a car park. While I am glad to hear that Mr. Packham cares about the plight of Frank James, I must have missed him when he came to the monthly work gatherings arranged by the Friends of Frank James. They have been held over a 5-year period, and I was present at each and every gathering. I wonder how this is possible. I did, however, happen to notice the presence and active involvement of independent councillors Julia Baker-Smith and Louisa Hillard, as well as the Green Party's Vix Lothian. Others visit and show an interest were Independents Paul Fuller, Roger Whitby-Smith and John Medland, as well as Labour's Geoff Lumley. Perhaps Mr. Packham got lost in the crowd. Something else that strikes me in this particular sentence in Mr. Packham's campaign leaflet is that he makes it sound as if it is positive that trees, bushes and green spaces are being removed to make way for 17 apartments and a car park. I'm afraid this does make me think of the line in the song Big Yellow Taxi. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. The Friends of Frank James, of which I am one, are very pleased our long-fought campaign has finally paid off, and that work has now started on the building. Frank James is at long last coming to life again, which is wonderful. However, there are various ways to skin a rabbit. The ravishment of the grounds was wholly unnecessary for the aim, the more as new build on the grounds is not supposed to commence until work in the building has finished. In other words, the current devastation was not needed and has left a former wonderful and rich wildlife haven in an unnecessary barren state. With renewed concern about the loss of wildlife habitats in Britain and across the globe, and with claims that Mr. Packham's party is a Green Party, one would have thought this to be of some concern to him as well.
Now we have a letter from Linda East of Limerston. Headline: Choose Bob for Candidate. I write to express my support for the only local candidate for selection as our Island MP to take place at a meeting on Friday. Surely the rational choice is Bob Seeley. He has already served 4 years as a councillor for Central Wight, where he has become very popular for his initiatives and effective in getting the job done. Bob has recently received an MBE for services to his country and has the island's well-being at heart. He is a strong campaigner and has vowed to support our Prime Minister in the forthcoming Brexit negotiations. He surely is the best candidate.
Not very PC, from Richard and Maggie Austin in Sandown. Once again our freedom of speech is under attack. Why on earth should our MP or anyone in public office resign because his opinion conforms to the biblical view and not to the politically correct one? Once again the LGBT lobby overreacts. Some of them sound like they're prepared to burn at the stake those who disagree with their lifestyle. We must at all costs preserve our freedom of expression, or else we'll turn into a totalitarian state.
Now we have a letter from David Potter of Cowes, headlined Craftiness of the Long Distance Runner. I met a past pupil of Cowes High School recently who told me his pet hate used to be the winter runs to Gurnard and back. In his last year, he had short-circuited the course by trotting down Egypt Hill, along Queen's Road to mark time in Mornington Road car park until the first half-dozen runners had reached the zigzag steps, where he rejoined them for the last few hundred yards. So far, so good, until his performance won him membership of the school cross-country team.
Now we're looking back, 100 years ago, May the 6th, 1917. With coal prices remaining excessively high, the Cowes and East Cowes Labour Council met to discuss what could be done. They considered municipalisation of coal, as they said the commodity was being unduly exploited and local traders were in the grip of a coal ring. Also, the communal kitchen in Ryde, which had opened 2 weeks earlier, served no fewer than 1,448 dinners during that brief period. The kitchen in Surrey Lodge, Barfield, served dinners to children and all of their mothers at twopence halfpenny each, the equivalent to about 50 pence now.
And 75 years ago, on May the 6th, 1939, a freak chicken with an extra pair of legs at the back of its body was hatched in Newport. The owner destroyed the bird after 10 days because, although it appeared to be in good health, he thought it might develop a disease which would cause it suffering. The light Sussex chicken was unable to run round on its own and would sit on its second pair of legs. With more and more people growing their own food, it was important to educate them in the fundamentals. Demonstration allotments were set up by local authorities to illustrate the value of symmetric cropping.
50 years ago, May the 6th, 1964, the island's first colour television was put on display at Radio Rentals Newport, where experimental transmissions from the BBC Two were broadcast. A black and white television was placed beside it. The county press noted it provided a striking comparison. Also 50 years ago, Bembridge man Peter Ailes headed to Canada to captain North America's first ever hovercraft. With him went a team from Hover Travel to train hovercraft crews which would run the vessels for Canadian firm Hoverwork.
25 years ago, on May the 6th, 1989, an incendiary device exploded in the men's restrooms of McDonald's in Newport. Emergency services had been alerted to the threat by an anonymous call. The device caused only minimal damage, but days later, 200 pupils were turned away from Grange Road Primary School after another anonymous call claimed there was a bomb in the premises. An extensive search yielded no evidence of a bomb, and it was thought the hoax was inspired by the events in McDonald's. And on the same date, it was curtain call for Ryde Theatre, which was abruptly closed and saw 4 staff sacked. The shock decision was made by the chair and vice chair of the Medina Leisure Service Committee just over a year after the theatre reopened. The 500-seat theatre had been refurbished at a cost of £500,000, nearly £1 million in today's money, but public support fell short of what had been expected.
10 years ago, May the 6th, 24, a section of the Sandown to Shanklin Cliff Path closed after a collapse with the repair bill estimated at £300,000. The 150-metre stretch close to Winchester House car park and Skew Bridge slipped away during the wet weather. Also, 10 years ago, safety on island beaches were bolstered with the arrival of a lifeguard team and rescue quad bike. The Isle of Wight Council invested in a new beach lifeguard team for Ventnor Beach, setting them up in a £25,000 plus headquarters between the Spyglass Inn and the bandstand. The quad bike, which was provided at cost from Newbridge company Wight ATV, was destined for ride as an emergency response vehicle.
Now we have the Wight Memories column with the headline, "What was life really like in the Cowes Blitz, Brenda?" Brenda Young was 6 when war was declared and 12 when it ended, so most of her formative years were in wartime. She clearly remembers her parents in the kitchen listening to the radio, looking very solemn. Her mother told the family war had been declared. Brenda asked her sister Janet, "What is a war?" Her sister replied, "You know, cowboys and Indians and things." Brenda continued, "We had our windows crisscrossed with sticky tape to stop a bomb blast shattering glass into the room, and everyone had to obey the blackout. So we had black blinds across all windows and doors. Outside it was pitch black. There were no street lamps and no lights in houses anywhere. Air raid shelters were built in the school playground, and whenever the siren went, we had to walk, not run, to the shelter. Once inside, we would listen to stories the teacher read. If the raid was overhead and very noisy, we would sing loudly." During the Cowes Blitz in May 1942, there were bombing raids every night for more than a week. One night, we were told to leave our house and run to the shelter. It was the most frightening experience of the war. An incendiary bomb had fallen on a nearby bungalow, and when we opened the back door, the light was horrifying, and the heat from the raging fires hurt our faces. Huge balls of flame shot into the sky, and the noise of the fire and the roaring and crackling were terrible. I clutched the doorpost, screaming, not wanting to go outside. Mum grabbed an old coat and threw it over my head so I couldn't see, and we all ran, me being dragged, to the shelter.
The following week, women and children were taken to the woods at Porchfield. We slept in the backs of lorries. Those precious nights and the peace and quiet after the dreadful noise of the bombing are indelibly printed in my mind and are amongst my most treasured memories. I was 7, old enough to appreciate the sound of the birds and the sight of the wild flowers. It was springtime, and we were awakened by the dawn chorus and the fresh smell of the woodland. In those woods and in those circumstances, I discovered my great need of the peacefulness of the countryside. God seemed to be very near in the calm of the darkness. On VE Day, victory was celebrated, and church bells, forbidden during the war, rang out in wonderful celebration. We celebrated. We danced in the streets. We had street parties with lemonade, jam sandwiches, and jelly and trifle. In a way, growing up in a wartime was a great privilege. Seeing sadness and danger, knowing my school friends who wore black armbands were mourning loved ones, and knowing at any time we could be killed, made us learn compassion and love. It demonstrated to all of us we should live for today and get up in the morning and think, today I shall be happy and live each moment in peace and harmony. God gave us life, we should be thankful and not waste any of it.
And further wartime memoirs, Alan Stroud writes, imagine a sunny summer day at Gurnard Beach, just down from the Woodvale Hotel, with laughing children swimming and splashing in the waves as their mothers look on. Now, picture a German aeroplane appearing in the sky, swooping low to drop a bomb on the terrified mothers and children. Brenda Richards, nee Young, now in her 80s, does not have to imagine it. She was there when it happened. Brenda is my wife's aunt, and the story you've just heard is just part of the fascinating story of her childhood, which she has written for her family. Aged 7, Brenda lived at 6 Broadfields Avenue in Cowes, and one afternoon, in the summer of 1941, she went to the beach with her mother.
It was a never-to-be-forgotten day. We were in the water swimming when the siren went and the enemy planes were heard approaching. Mum called to us and we all ran to the public lavatories on the green. The air raid warden was there and he kept saying, "Keep calm, keep calm." The building was crowded with women and children, and women started screaming. Mum, in her sergeant major voice, said, "Shut up that bloody row," and there was a deathly hush. No one dared panic after that. The planes got nearer and the drone of their engines was horrible. Then came the whistle of a bomb. Softly at first, then louder and louder, until whoomph, the doors and windows were blown in and we were all pushed as though by a great hand. There was a brick and glass debris everywhere. When the all clear sounded, we filed out, clambering over the rubble to find a huge bomb crater with earth, rocks and stones piled up where we had been sheltering. Mercifully no one was hurt, and everyone felt we had experienced a miracle. We all knew we could be killed at any time, but right now we were alive and very thankful for that.
And now we have the following section, which is written by Kat James. It's the My View column, and the first one is We Are England in Miniature. There's a familiar call and response that goes something like this. Tell anyone you live on the Isle of Wight, and undoubtedly hear the stock reply, "I went there on holiday as a kid." Even I went on holiday to the island as a kid. My overriding memory of a boiling hot day at Shanklin was the journey back from the beach on the British Rail train. Exhausted from digging in the sand and in the heat of the sun, I lay on the train's bench seat, feeling its tufted upholstery prickle my back. In fact, it was quite uncomfortable. Closer examination revealed I was shockingly sunburnt, but hey, it was the early 70s and the perils of skin cancer probably hadn't been invented. It didn't put me off the Isle of Wight though, and many years later I bought a one-way ticket for the ferry and have been here ever since. Arriving from the distinctly urban setting of Portsmouth, the island took some getting used to. The first thing I encountered was the vagary of Isle of Wight time. In the city, people are scrabbling for your business. Here there appeared to be a more fluid approach to urgency. I soon added a new word to my lexicon, somewhen. Distance is another elastic concept on the island. On paper the county looks pretty compact. A matter of moments surely to pop over from Ryde to Cowes, say? Yet I heard tales of Newport dwellers who hadn't seen the sea for months, and old gubbers who'd never even left the island. I'd been here a month or two when I heard this story from visitors who were staying in a hotel in Shanklin. We got chatting to a couple over breakfast, they explained. They told us they live in Freshwater. Apparently they have a holiday in Shanklin every year. They go for the shops. I was incredulous, and yet soon other similar tales reached my ears. A Shorrell colleague took her children camping in St Helens for their summer holidays. Hey, it was fun, cheap, and they could pop home every day and feed their rabbit. My incredulity turned into nodding acceptance. No ferry fares, no OCD panic about whether you've left the iron on. And so it has come to pass that many of my best breaks have been had on the island. I've stayed in Ventnor's fanciest hotel, recreated Abigail's party in the home of Britain's first female factory inspector, played football with friends in a vintage-styled, deconsecrated tin tabernacle. Who needs term time holiday to Disneyland for enrichment? England in miniature may be a horribly hackneyed expression, but there really is so much on our island doorsteps.
The Life and Times of Mr. Isle of Wight. When Maurice Barton ruled County Hall, there was not so much a political divide as a yawning chasm, but on both sides of the gulch there was also respect for a man who, despite his flaws and foibles, clearly had the best interests of his island at heart. Marks of that respect were shown both at his funeral at the start of the year and last Wednesday on the eve of what would have been his 76th birthday. His former colleagues, lieutenants, friends, officers, political opponents and family came together for the launch of a new book which catalogues his life and times. What would have been more important to Maurice was the fact that his family were there. His wife Marcia and his two daughters Maria and Lynette and his beloved grandchildren. After the launch of the book, Maurice Barton, Mr. Isle of Wight, Marcia was clearly touched. People of all political shades have come together for what was a good cause, selling a book that will raise substantial funds for the Earl Mountbatten Hospice. It was the hospice team that gave Maurice the opportunity to die with dignity and with those he loved at his East Cowes home. It was his wish the book should aid its invaluable work. When he was told he was terminally ill, he never moaned about it, and Christopher Scott, his friend and colleague, ensured at least something good would come out of it. The book, said Marcia. It was Christopher who had cut his writing teeth putting together a children's book while on holiday in Tuscany, who had just months later heard the dread news from Maurice about his diagnosis, suggested the book, and the pair set about it with gusto. 41 people from Paddy Ashdown and former top council officers John Horsnell, Felix Hetherington and David Jagger, to friends, associates and political sparring partners such as retired Judge Richard Price, shared their major and minor Maurice memories. Politically, Maurice and the judges were poles apart, but chums through it all as then young council firebrands. As time moved on, sadly the pair had cancer in common. The 41 all share their memories of Maurice, and the man himself chips in with recollections. Awarded the OBE for his service and being the leader of the council for a record stint means he had a few of those. One story recounted by businessman Norman Arnold, who was big in the local Lib Dems in their heyday and a trusted friend, was about Ron Smith, who was huge in the party and demanded that Maurice should stand as MP during a selection interview in the mid-80s. Maurice calmly explained that he felt he could achieve more to improve the lives of islanders as head of the council rather than MP, and recommended Dr. Peter Brand as candidate. Felix Hetherington was county secretary and solicitor, working with Maurice throughout his 15 years as leader of the county council and then the unitary authority. He is also now chairman of the board of the county press, for which Maurice worked for 40 years, able to juggle his public, personal and working life through the benign paternalism of the publisher, which allows him the time to serve on the council. He was a leader in the true sense of the word. He got things done at a time when the council did an awful lot of work, said Felix. Morris is acknowledged as the best MP on the island never had, and arguably the most influential and local politician of the 20th century. He was tagged at the reasonable revolutionary, but the final description has to go to his co-author, Christopher Scott. He revealed at the launch that one title considered for the book was Marmite Morris. After all, both the spread and the man simply divided opinion.
And the book was launched at Key Arts Newport, which Morris supported for many years. Sales at launch night raised £1,650 for the hospice, with one signed copy selling for £200. The book, printed by Cross Media, is available at the hospice and the county press shop. It costs £12 with extra donations welcomed. Christopher Scott will sign copies of Morris Barton, My Isle of Wight at the county press shop between 10 a.m. and noon on Saturday, May the 20th.
And now what's on? The Isle of Wight Fibromyalgia Society group meets every second Tuesday of the month at All Saints Church Ryde from 1:30 until 4. Anyone with fibromyalgia and their partners or carers are welcome for the support, understanding and a chat to meet other sufferers of the condition. More details from Karen on 0844 887346 or email iwmsg.fibromates@gmail.com.
And the Isle of Wight Cancer Support Centre is offering free, non-clinical support for anyone living with cancer in the form of befriending, therapies, counselling, transport, patient grants and holiday homes, and it's holding an open access drop-in session at the Green Room, Salisbury Gardens, Ventnor, on Wednesday between 10 a.m. and noon.
Sunday concerts at 3 p.m. Pianist Sally Halsey, together with some of her talented friends, will give a series of Sunday afternoon concerts. The first, this Sunday, will see Sally play pieces by Schumann, Saint-Saëns and Prokofiev with cellist Joshua Lynch. Other musicians will accompany Sally during the coming weeks, including cellist Gemma Connor on June the 4th and soprano Jessica Thayer on June the 18th, performing classical works by Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, Chopin and others. On July the 2nd, Sally, Jessica and friends will perform Jean Carlo's one-act opera The Old Maid and the Thief. All the concerts will be held at St Catherine's Church, Ventnor at 3 p.m. Tickets are available on the door or in advance by calling 078 56 27 9998 or emailing helen@conbrio.com. And passes are available for all 4 concerts. Proceeds will go to St Catherine's School and its work with schools in Ghana.
Fun with the dinosaurs. Everyone is invited to join a dinosaur dinner party at Blackgang Chine next Saturday, May the 13th. Meet all your favourite dinosaurs: Tyrannosaurus Rex, Shadow and Sheila, Procompsognathus dinosaurs Jack and Jill, baby Brachiosaurus George, and the mischievous Coqui, the Coquicephalus, as they roam the park and host their own celebration. A spokesperson said, "There will be a dinosaur-themed party game, craft making, treasure hunt, and a new Shadow and Sheila live show. Our special celebration dinosaur cake will be presented and cut at 1 p.m, with all children welcome to sit with their favourite characters and enjoy a free slice of cake and a glass of squash. For details on the event, which runs from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m, visit www.blackgangchine.com.
Wolverton Manor Folk and Blues Fair will be on the 13th of May, 11:30 to 8 p.m. Europe's premier blues performer Dave Kelly and his band and will feature along with the Goat Roper Rodeo Band, Double Hitch, Anna Rice, Laurie McVeigh, Doug Aldred and the Silver Lining, Moonshiners, the Chain Ferry Gang, Abacus, Vote Pedro, The Blues List, Red Squirrel, Brystone Barnacle and many more. There will be a beer tent, food stalls, children's activities, circus skills and tea tent alongside the craft stalls. Tickets are £7 in advance or £9 on the gate. Under 12s are free. You can get the tickets from Waterstones in Shorewell, from the Brystone Village shop or from Bridlesford Farm shop. It's in aid of leukemia research and Brystone School.
And now some news of what's on at Shanklin Theatre. Coming up on Wednesday 10th of May, you've got Reginald D. Hunter, that's from 8 p.m. Thursday the 11th of May, The Best of the West End and Beyond, that's on from 8:15 p.m. On Friday the 12th of May, Cloud Busting, which is the music of Kate Bush, and that starts at 7:30 p.m. Saturday the 13th of May, Lucy Worsley with Jane Austen at Home, that's from 7:30 p.m. On Thursday the 18th, Best of the West End and Beyond, which starts at 8:15. Friday 19th, The Cast Off Kinks, which is from 7:30 p.m. Saturday the 20th, Lee Nelson, which is also from 7:30 p.m. Wednesday 24th of May, Tony Stockwell, again from 7:30 p.m. Thursday the 25th, The Best of the West End and Beyond, again from 8:15 p.m. And from Saturday the 27th through to Tuesday the 30th, showing You're Only Young Twice, which again starts at 7:30 p.m. And finally on Wednesday the 31st of May, Count Arthur Strong, which is on from 8 p.m. And you can call the box office on 868 000.
And from One Leisure, arts, music and comedy at Medina Theatre in Fairley Road, Newport. There's the Beach Boys Band on Friday the 5th of May at 7:30. Tickets are £17.50. The Isle of Wight Music Centre on Saturday the 13th of May at 2 p.m. Foundation Wind Band, Percussion Ensemble Stage Band, Music Centre Wind Band and Combined Bands. At 7 p.m, there's the Youth Choir, Recorder Groups, Adult Choir, Music Centre Strings Youth Orchestra and the Youth Wind Band. Tickets are £8 and £4 for juniors. Blake, Songs from Stage and Screen, Friday the 26th of May at 7:30. Tickets £20. Mercury, the official UK #1 tribute to Queen, Friday the 2nd of June at 7:30. Tickets £17, £16 for seniors and juniors. On Saturday the 3rd of June at 7:30, there's Fleetwood Mac and tickets are £17. And on Friday the 1st of September at 6 p.m, tickets £15 for the Little Mix Experience. The telephone number there is 823 880.
And The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is set for Cows. The production is coming to the Trinity Theatre. Rita Kuchmi's musical adaptation of the C.S. Lewis novel will be staged at Trinity Theatre next Friday, May the 12th at 7:30 p.m, next Saturday and Sunday, the 13th and 14th of May at 2:30 p.m, on May the 19th at 7:30 p.m, and on May the 20th and 21st at 2:30 p.m.
And some news now about donated equipment brings the Isle of Wight ambulances up to date. Island ambulances have received an upgrade thanks to the Friends of St Mary's Hospital. The most substantial upgrade was a £21,000 to install military standard fluid warmers which help treat severe conditions such as hypothermia. Joanne Barry, Ambulance Clinical Support Officer, thanked the Friends for their generosity, adding, "All frontline ambulance staff are currently undergoing training with the aim of their vehicles each being equipped with a fluid warmer. An additional £3,000 was spent on providing 20 traction splints to relieve pain from certain leg fractures." And paramedic Mike Wigley said, "If a bone is shattered in half, the leg muscles immediately pull the bones together and it really hurts." He recalled how such a splint would have been most useful in the case of a woman who had broken her femur at Ryde Pier. "She was allergic to morphine, so you can imagine the pain she had," said Mike. "The equipment is quite commonplace on mainland ambulances, and we are most grateful to the Friends for bringing our vehicles up to date."
And continuing with further news items, we have news of a £6.3 million order for Thames boats. And that's a Wight shipyard which is to build 6 fast clipper ferries. Wight Shipyard, which built the new Red Jet 6, is pressing ahead with its latest construction, 2 craft to add to a London transport fleet. The Columbine Union flag hangar at East Cowes was thrown open last week to highlight progress on Mercury Clipper and Jupiter Clipper, upon which construction began 6 months ago. Representing an investment of more than £6.3 million, the order has seen the creation and retention of jobs on the island and in London, and the involvement of more than 100 businesses in the supply chain. Building the 2 new fast ferries is the largest ever order for the recently rebranded Wight Shipyard Company, which also repairs and refurbishes craft. The first boat, Mercury Clipper, will be launched at East Cowes in June and conduct endurance trials later that month before making the journey to London for the official launch. Jupiter Clipper will follow shortly afterwards. The customer, MBNA Thames Clippers, is London's leading riverboat service, connecting many of the capital's top attractions and providing passengers with the opportunity to take in the iconic London skyline from the river along the way, such as the Houses of Parliament, the London Eye, Shakespeare's Globe, the Tower of London, and on to Greenwich for the Old Royal Naval College and Royal Museums in Greenwich. When the 2 new boats enter service, MBNA Thames Clippers will be the biggest commercial passenger fleet operating solely in English waters. Founder and owner of Wight Shipyard, Peter Morton, said, "We now employ 75 people, including 5 apprentices. We have assembled all the skills that are needed to compete for a vast passenger ferry market, and we are looking good for orders for the next year, including tendering for the 10 new MBNA Thames Clippers the company says it will need."
Can-do people wanted to shape future of tourism. People involved in the island's tourism industry are being asked to apply to join a new Visit Isle of Wight board. The new group, drawn from large and small businesses alike, will meet 4 or 5 times a year and will be charged with shaping the future of tourism on the Isle of Wight. 12 new members with a can-do attitude are needed for the board, with nominations closing on May the 26th. If more than 12 people apply, elections will be held with votes from supporters of Whitebid. The new board will hold its first meeting in June. Chief Executive and Director of Marketing for Visit Isle of Wight, David Thornton, said, "A common concern people sometimes express about destination management organisations is that they are run by the big boys. This is often true when they start up, but here on the island we have an opportunity to put in place a genuinely proportional and effective board of directors representing all sectors of the visitor economy. We have 4 or 5 board meetings a year, so being on the board doesn't have to take up too much time. I hope we'll see a broad cross-section of people wanting to get round the board table and help us grow the visitor economy. Tourism currently generates more than £550 million a year into island businesses, but we have ambitions to grow the island's income by another £60 million within the next 4.5 years. To find out more about the process and how to apply, visit www.visitwight.org. Click on Whitebid at the top and then become a member/board director.
Paramedics saved my son's life. This is an exclusive by Emily Pearce. Quick-thinking NHS staff saved an island teenager who came within hours of death after he was struck down by meningitis. Nick Platt, who's 16, has had his spleen and adrenal gland removed and remains in hospital a month after he was taken into intensive care. Describing the ordeal as every parent's worst nightmare, his mother, Carol Platt, said Nick would have died that night were it not for the swift response of paramedics and hospital staff. An ambulance arrived within 5 minutes of Carol calling 111, and after Nick's flu-like symptoms worsened, there was blood in his vomit. Paramedics administered life-saving antibiotics en route to St Mary's Hospital. Nick spent the night in intensive care, fighting for his life, before he was met at the Red Funnel Terminal by a specialist team from Southampton General Hospital and raced across the Solent. Following another life-saving procedure, where an ECMO machine was used to oxygenate Nick's blood through an artificial lung, giving his own shattered lungs a rest, He was taken to St Thomas's Hospital in London. My sister is a paramedic and said to mention it could be sepsis when I called. I had no idea how serious it was. The paramedics were so calm. I learnt later they knew immediately it was meningitis, but didn't want to scare us, said Carol, 47, of Winchester Park Road in Sandown. I thought he had flu. I could tell something was wrong because he wasn't looking at his phone for a change. He laid down on the sofa and put his head on my lap, then took some paracetamol and went to bed. He woke up with his skin like ice, although he felt hot. He was sick and there was blood, which was when I called 111. Earlier that day, when Nick was sent home from Ride School, his uncle, school fines campaigner John Platt, was at the Supreme Court learning he had lost his term-time holiday case. Praising the amazing care his nephew had received, John said, "My family will never be able to thank them enough. An army of absolute superheroes saved someone very precious to us. Our NHS is the best thing about being British." That's all for today, so it's goodbye from Stephen.
And for me, Alison.
This is a download from the BBC. For more information and our terms of use, go to www.bbc.co.uk/in-touch. Good evening. Tonight, we'll be giving you the facts on a new test for spotting the eye condition glaucoma early. And everyone has to find their own way of coping with failing sight. For Annie, it's been social media.
Go live.
And she managed to rope me in as well.
Recording.
This is Peter Wight from the In Touch Radio 4 interviewing me. And I did talk a lot, but they can edit me out. Is anybody there? And it's the first time Peter's gone live, isn't it, Peter?
That is absolutely true.
Do you want
And
to-
the last.
Are you going to give us a song, Peter?
No, I am not.
Finish.
And there'll be more of Annie Giles Quinn's edited journey from struggling to coping later in the programme. But first, In Touch has never claimed to be a medical programme, but what we do try to do is give you the facts when claims are made about new treatments for eye conditions. They can often be overblown and give people false hope of miracle cures. But a new test related to glaucoma doesn't claim a cure. The hope is, though, that glaucoma will be able to be spotted far earlier and that treatment could therefore be started before any vision has been lost. So, how excited should we be? Well, Professor Anthony King is a consultant ophthalmic surgeon and a trustee of the International Glaucoma Association.
The problem with glaucoma is that many people who have glaucoma are completely unaware of it, and that essentially it's something that is detected opportunistically in the majority of cases when they go to visit their own optician for an eye test and then they're spotted as having glaucoma. So this new test that we're discussing today isn't really aimed at the moment at that sort of early diagnosis of glaucoma. The test that has been described is very much a proof of concept of a technique to identify whether or not evaluating dying or unhealthy cells in the retina is possible, and secondly, whether it's feasible.
So what can you actually now do, though, that you couldn't do before? And just explain what people would actually see when they do that test.
The test allows imaging of individual cells, retinal ganglion cells within the retina, and looking at the retina in this much detail in glaucoma before hasn't really been possible. Most of the tests that we do up to now are much more global tests, in the sense we're trying to get a feel or an average of what's going on. And we use scans and visual field tests and photographs to achieve that.
But I suppose part of the problem is still to be realistic. But if you can't be sure and you haven't got clear symptoms, you've still got the problem, haven't you, of testing people early enough in order to be able to help them?
Yeah. So you're quite right, and we don't really have a screening programme as such in the UK at the moment for glaucoma, and until there is a screening programme, then screening tests really wouldn't add much to what we're already doing. So until we adopt that screening approach rather than an opportunistic approach, screening for glaucoma and diagnosing it earlier is going to be difficult.
So what you're saying is what we still need in some ways is what's a political decision to say that screening is something that pretty much everybody ought to have.
Well, it would be helpful. We already know that there are some risk groups, particularly patients who have a family history of glaucoma and patients with diabetes. So those patients are probably already aware of it. It's the awareness as much as anything else that's important.
Still being realistic, this isn't claimed as a cure, is it? What will it be able to do?
So this is not really treating the disease in any way whatsoever. This is very much about detecting it and perhaps allowing us to quantify it better. And then also there is a suggestion from this research that they may be able to anticipate patients who are going to progress more quickly. So all of those are very helpful, but it's important to remember that this is simply a proof of concept study on a very small number of patients, only 8 with glaucoma and 8 normal patients. So clearly quite a lot more work needs to be done.
And just explain, because that is a slightly technical term, what do you mean by a proof of concept?
So essentially, the investigators wanted to ensure that the test was going to be safe to do, that the patients would tolerate the test if they were going to undertake it, and also to identify what would be the best dose of the dye to give them and what timings to undertake the scans would be helpful. So it was very much about testing those things as much as anything else.
And when is this likely to be available to people? I mean, you've made the point about the need for screening, but scientifically, as it were, when would it be available to be generally something that people could do?
I think we're talking many, many years in the future. It's a very onerous test to undertake at the moment. It requires an injection of dye into the vein. The pupils need to be dilated and the patients need to sit around for some time while the scans are being undertaken. So a lot of refinement would be required to improve the process. Ideally, if the dye could be administered as a tablet or as eye drops, and we didn't need to dilate the pupil to take the scans, and also we identified the maximum time at which the scan should be taken. That would greatly improve our ability to deliver the test, and then it would become very much more about whether or not it's worth delivering it.
I mean, the danger always is with this kind of thing. People get very excited when they hear that an eye condition can be improved. What would you say to people who've actually got the condition or think it may be imminent?
Well, I think that this test isn't going to really make very much difference to how we monitor or treat people presently or within the near future. But it's promising in terms of perhaps our ability to detect and monitor glaucoma in the future.
Professor Anthony King of the International Glaucoma Association. Now, when Annie Giles Quinn's sight began to deteriorate, in her case as the result of a genetic condition, she initially thought, as many do, that the sky had fallen in. But little by little, she began to find strategies which convinced her that life was still worth living. Now, 20 years on, she's offering advice to others. She's now something of a star on social media. And for several years, she could regularly be seen, if you look closely, as an extra in her favourite TV soap. So, how did all this happen? Well, I went to visit Annie and her menagerie at her home in Manchester. Hello.
Hiya.
Is that Annie?
Yeah.
I'm Peter.
Hello, Peter. Sorry, what's
I'll
the
come
dog,
in.
Peter?
I think the dog's saying hello.
Welcome to the madhouse.
Will he escape, the dog? Hello,
Oh, I
dog.
can't believe I've met you. I listened to you loads and loads.
What on earth is that?
Oh, that's Chico, the crazy parrot. I've got to drug it in a minute.
What do you use? Well, Annie has turned Chico's face to the window, but we've now also drawn a curtain round him. So now it's your turn to talk, Annie. You've always had poor sight, I think, but when did your sight begin to deteriorate badly?
Well, I've always wore glasses and contact lenses, but I could drive and what have you. And it first started in 1997. I remember that because I got breast cancer and I had to have treatment, and the chemotherapy and the other treatment triggered off a genetic condition that I didn't know I had called cone rod dystrophy. And I started to lose a bit of my sight. And then 5 years later, my cancer came back. And when I had more treatment, it seemed to accelerate it.
This is because you've got a specific genetic condition.
Yeah, I have. And then about 8 years ago, I got really bad. I was registered partially sighted first, and then they registered me blind.
What were the things which really affected you most? I mean, what did you miss most?
It's an ongoing thing because I was surrounded by my children who were younger, so I got a lot of help. The biggest thing I missed, and the only thing I really missed, is driving. I would love to drive a car. And I used to have motorbikes because I used to have a motorbike shop. So I used to have different motorbikes that, you know, when I took one in for a part exchange, and I used to work in the evenings at Granada, so I used to get my motorbike and go to Granada and park it on Coronation Street. And so I do miss driving. I'd love to get in a car or on a motorbike and show my kids what Mum used to be like.
Because you worked on Coronation Street, didn't you?
Yeah, well, what happened, I became a bookie, believe it or not, and my friend that I met there, she used to work at Granada. They used to have a hospitality bar for all the actors called the Stables Club. And so I went down, I thought I'd love to work here. And so I asked and I got the job. So I used to work in the bookies during the day, managing it. Then I used to go to the Stables Club, but instead of serving drinks, I used to be working out all the crew's bets. So I worked at Granada and I started there in 76.
Well, I'm going to bring you back to that because there's a little circular element to that story. By the way, if you can hear a bell in the background, that is Colette.
Colette.
It's Colette the cat.
Colette.
Now, anyone listening to you, I mean, they can tell you're a bubbly person. I mean, that comes over. But I guess when you're losing your sight, as it were, in stages, that's fairly hard to take.
When it really happened after the last lot of chemotherapy and I had to have a mastectomy and I was having problems with my marriage. I was in a very, very unhappy marriage. I wasn't happy at all. My husband went, which was a good thing, you know. He did me the favour and I thank you every day that he left. So then I came back to Manchester. Like I said, my children used to help me all the time, but then they don't want to be taking the blind mother out, you know. They used to say step, you know, when there was a step, and I couldn't accept the fact that I really was going blind.
But you began to turn your life around in a more positive direction.
Well, I applied to guide dogs and they came out, they said you have to learn, you know, long cane first. So I had to do this course to learn how to work the long cane. I was so depressed and like so miserable, it's not like me. And I wanted to show my boys that I was that crazy person because they used to call me Crazy Horse at Granada. That was my nickname. Anyway, I had the cane training and then I remember sons went out to college. One went to college, one was going to school, and I said, oh, I'm going out today with my long stick, you know. And it's the first time I've been out on my own without my boys. And I got to the gate and I actually couldn't make it. Anyway then, guide dogs got in touch with me because I did suffer depression and it was hard because I knew I could do it, but going out on my own with the white stick, I was scared. Anyway, I got a knock on the door and then he turned up, Mr. Quinn. Well, I started laughing and I'm Annie Giles Quinn. So it's Mr. and Mrs. Quinn. And from the minute I met him, I decided I've got this gift and I'm going to use it. And I started to get my confidence back. And from that day, I did it on my own. So I thought, I'm going to give something back. So I started doing voluntary work for guide dogs. What I do, Peter, is I go round to schools or to workplaces and I tell them all about guide dogs and I tell them my story. And then I do collection boxes, you know, the collection boxes. I said, oh, I'll do some of those. So I do all the pubs in Manchester. I'm no fool, you know.
But that also led you to another very significant location.
They phoned me and they said, you used to work at Granada, Annie, didn't you? I went, yeah, 20 years ago. So they said, only someone's at Coronation Street have asked for a collection box. Can you take it? Oh, I'd love to. And I knew the lady, but I didn't know whether she'd remember me. And when I got there, it was quite funny. She comes out, and as always, they look at the dog, you know, hello. And then she looked, touched, went, oh, it's Annie. And I went, Judy. So we had a big cuddle. And she said, can't believe it's you, come in. So I sat in the green room all day talking. And she said, see if you could do some extra work.
What kind of extra work did you do?
So I go in once a month. And I walk up and down Coronation Street. You can see me and my dog there, you know.
Are you always pictured with the dog?
Oh, yeah. Either that or the white stick. It's my choice to use the dog or the white stick.
And I suppose it's good for them because they're always being accused of, you know, we only see white people, we don't see any disabled people. I imagine that's partly the value of having you, is it?
Yeah, but I like to think it's because they all like me and they remember from years ago. Yeah. Because, to be honest, I don't think they'd be bothered if I had the dog or not.
What did it mean to you to go back?
I couldn't wait for the day, you know. I kept pinching myself thinking, oh, is it really going to happen?
And you made one particular friend at Coronation Street who anyone who's ever watched it will know about, won't they?
Yes, you're talking about Annie Kirkbride. Yeah.
Who played Deirdre, of course.
Yeah. Well, years ago, Annie and I were best friends. We were always in trouble. She is such fun. And then what happened is I'd had cancer and Annie was on the phone helping me through it because Annie had had cancer herself and gone through the chemotherapy. And she was there for me through a very, very emotional time. And then I got a phone call a couple of months after from my husband David, and he said, Annie's going on This Is Your Life. Can you come on it?
Off screen, of course, your priority has always been family and friends.
And when I needed you, Annie, you were there to help me.
Your friend for 20 years, Annie Giles Quinn.
They did edit quite a lot of me out because I was talking for England, as
Surely
you can
not.
imagine.
Surely.
Yeah. I was waffling, and it's all on my iPad. I started to go on Facebook because everyone was on Facebook, and then I started meeting old friends from Granada that I work with.
But I think you've also used social media. You've got practical uses to do with your visual.
Oh,
impact.
well, I've always been a bit of an exhibitionist, Peter. My mum said I was a show-off. No, to be honest, I just like people. I love people. I love making people laugh. I know a lot of blind people climb Kilimanjaro and jump out of planes. That is not for me, Peter. I'm not going to do anything I didn't do before I lost my vision, trust me. But I used to be a decorator, help my dad decorate. So I still wallpaper. But now it's got to the point I can only put stripy wallpaper up because you don't have to match it, and it's got to be thick. But I can only do that because I did decorate before. So I did little videos of, Annie decorating. And then I started doing cooking videos, and people just keep watching them.
So cooking is very important.
I love cooking, and I've always been able to cook.
How has it changed your method since you've lost a lot of your sight?
I never measured anything out, Peter. It's all by taste.
Some blind cooks say the most important thing is you've got to be tidy. You've got to know where everything is.
I hope no one in my family is listening to this because, honest to God, Peter, I start off and I want to be like my mother. But I don't know what goes wrong, Peter. I use every knife, every fork, every spoon, and I'm banging about, saying, where's this? Even if I make a cheese toasted, Peter, you would think I made it for an army. I want to be a domestic goddess, but I don't like housework and I'm messy. That's why I can't have anyone in the kitchen, because I know where my mess is and I know my own mess.
Just to take you back to social media and Facebook, because I think you use it in some senses to protect yourself, don't you?
Yeah, you can go live now on Facebook and it's fantastic.
Explain what you do.
You go to Facebook and then you press this button, and don't forget my Facebook talks, and if people come up, as you're going live, names will come up, but it reads it out to me, and you press the go live button and it goes 3, 2, 1, live, and then I let the dog off the lead, and then I just hold my phone and walk round my white stick, and people pop up, say, hi Annie, go, hi, are you all right, Annie? Yeah. Where's Mr. Quinn? Look to the left. And they're all telling me.
So these are people on their own computers, wherever they are, but they tell you, so if you're looking for something, for example, they'll direct you.
Straight away, I said, can anyone help me? It gives me that security, and they tell me where the dog is, and they tell me if anyone's walking towards me. And it's lovely.
Given the way your life has turned around, if you could only give a newly blind person one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would never have dreamt of asking for help years ago, which stopped me doing shopping, because I can now walk into a shop and say, excuse me, can I have some assistance? I can do things I never thought I could do in a million years. And people love helping you. If you ask for help, it's not a sign of weakness. There's just some things that you've got to accept. You cannot do it. You used to be able to do it, and you can't do it now.
How do you think this has happened in a way? Because you were describing, when we began to talk about the difficulties when you lost your sight, your loss of confidence. But you're now describing someone who's kind of at the heart of the community. I know you do volunteer work, as you said. You counsel people in the same situation. How do you think this has happened?
When you first lose your sight, it's so scary for anyone. But to me, because I'd had progressive breast cancer twice, and the first time I had it, I was told possibly months to 2 years to live. I'm still here now, 18 years later, and although the sight is so hard to come to terms with, I feel as though I'm living on borrowed time and that I feel lucky, very, very lucky.
Annie Giles Quinn, with quite a bit of help really from Colette the cat, Chico the parrot and of course the mighty Quinn. And that's it for today. If you have any queries or comments, you can call our action line on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. That's it from me, Peter Wight, producer Cheryl Gabriel and the team. Goodbye.